The question of contraception is very important and something that the church has spoken to directly, without hesitation, for 2,000 years. I say it firmly and clearly like that because I'm sure many who are watching this interview have no idea what I'm talking about. It is an aspect of our sexual ethics that has been, especially in my part of the world, not so much in Romania, I'm sure, but in the Western world, in the not traditionally Orthodox world, it has been studiously ignored because the sexual revolution has its origin there, and this is such an offensive aspect of our ethics. Contraception is explicitly forbidden by the church. It is forbidden. And numerous fathers, including St. John Chrysostom, have spoken in great detail about the sin that is involved in the use of contraception. And I'm not just talking about abortifacient contraception. There are two types of contraception, two types of medical applications to avoid having children. Remember, the quest for contraception is essentially fallen man's quest to have the pleasure without the responsibility. The way that God fashioned sexuality is that there is both an intense pleasure. St. John Chrysostom says the pleasure is so intense in order to justify the great burden of parenting, right? If the pleasure wasn't intense, many smaller souls would never have children at all. There's just too much work. You have to work hard, you have to provide. The children wakes you up in the middle of the night, right? If your goal is to be undisturbed, right, to have a peaceful life, and you do what you want, me, myself, and I, then children are trouble, right? Children are burdens. If you have a Christian vision, if you have a grander vision, then of course it's just the opposite. As soon as contraception, especially the pill in 1950, became popular, fallen man found a way to have the pleasure without the responsibility. And we've been trying to keep the two apart ever since. And it's just gone from one thing to another. Initially, it was sold to the Western world as you can have the pleasure without the responsibility in marriage. But then, of course, it became key for the explosion of fornication. So now young people are constantly pretending that they're married and living in fornication, hurting themselves very deeply, establishing bonds that they should never establish except in marriage, and it's hurting people very, very badly. The ethics of the church that say, look, accept the children that God has given you and reserve sexual expression for marriage. This is to help people. This is to nourish their happiness, their long-term happiness. It's not to hurt them in any way. St. John Chrysostom says, look, the best way to understand it is the seed of a man is holy. It's holy. And a person, if you looked at a farmer and he took seed and he purposely threw it into the trees instead of onto the fertile field, you think he was insane. He says the fertile field is the maternal womb, he says. And to take that which is holy, it's meant to be cast into the maternal womb, and with God's blessing can become an eternal being, a human being. One human being is more precious to God than the entire world. And that's his idea. He said, to do otherwise, he said, is to treat your wife. This is in his teaching on the Epistle to the Romans. He says, if you throw the seed over there in order to avoid children, he goes, you're treating your wife like a prostitute. That's very hard words, but we can trust him. It's St. John Chrysostom. We can trust him. The Lord's very clear in the scriptures that there are three main reasons for marriage. Three. St. John Chrysostom expounds on them in detail. The first is to provide a solution in this fallen world for man's disordered desires. St. Paul says, for instance, in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, he says, because of fornication, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. The natural desire and draw between a man and a woman can be blessed by God as a solution to the virus of lust. Marriage can be a way that you overcome lust by developing love, guiding desire into sacrificial love, into a one flesh union with someone else. So this is one of the important contributions of marriage, is that it provides a means of sexual expression that is not wild and doesn't destroy the human being. The second purpose is to reproduce the image of God on the earth, procreation. St. John Chrysostom says that's not the first reason. In his mind, the first reason is to solve our disorder. And he describes that very beautifully. He says, the embraces of a husband and wife. He says, a husband is a man who lives in the public square like a boat on a wild sea. And it's raging. And he's getting knocked all the time. And then he comes home to the embraces of his wife. And he says, it's like a boat coming into a calm harbor. And when she puts her arms around him, she settles his peace. He says that the wife is, in Greek, the word is philtron. It means a potent healing drug. That's what the wife is for the husband, a potent healing. It's so romantic. St. John Chrysostom is so beautiful on this subject. This is what the embraces of the wife accomplish for the man. It cures your disorder, guiding your desire towards union, towards children, towards love. It reproduces the image of God on the earth by having children. And a third thing is that it functions, marital lovemaking functions as a superglue, as a way to nourish union, such that the love of a husband-wife can withstand all of the storms of life. And a true, what the church fathers call consecrated friendship can actually develop. And people can look at a Christian family, and it's like you feel a breeze. You breathe, oh, look at that. I tell my parishioners all the time, many people ask me, what's the recipe for growing your church? They see, in our little experience, we've gone from a little tiny mission to a very large community. And we've sent hundreds of parishioners all over the United States, actually, who have moved out and are now helping other churches. And I think they often think I'm going to say one or two tricks. There's no tricks. But one of the things I always mention, I said, when people come in our disordered culture, when they come into a community and they see husbands and wives in the presence of God, worshiping, loving each other, surrounded by their children, their heart beats differently. Their heart tells them, this is from God. They see light, they see love, and of course there are many other important things. The liturgy, the presence of God, the singing, the worship, many other things contribute to bearing witness to the miracle of the church and Christ's presence in the church, which is what draws people to conversion. But I can't tell you how many times I've been told by catechumens after I've baptized them that the reason they came was because they came in and they saw all these loving families, and they have never seen that in their whole life. That just doesn't exist anymore. It exists in the church. That's how powerful family life is. The best way to understand it is from Jesus' own words. This is in John 13. He says, by this, all men will know that you are my disciples, if you have love one for another. If you love each other as I loved you, everyone will know. It's the ultimate apologetic. It proves Holy Orthodoxy. It proves the Christian faith. People come and they're like, I've never seen this before. I want this. I'm made for this. Help me. I want to be, this is what happens. And this is why families are so important and why children are so important. Jesus said, unless we become like them, we're never going to enter the kingdom of heaven. That's how much he esteemed children. And if we have Christ's mind, should not we esteem children the same way? Shouldn't we look at them not as burdens, but as witnesses to the kingdom of God? They possess it. They possess it. They don't have the complicated souls that we have. Young children, they don't go to confession. They don't have to go to confession. I tell people they don't go to confession until they start acting like us. As soon as they start acting like us, then of course they have to go. But before that, no, they possess the kingdom. We give them everything. We baptize them, we chrismate them, and we give them Eucharist from the time they're infants. They literally are sinless, beautiful witnesses to the kingdom of God. And to see a family with children changes people's lives.